This week on the podcast, I am doing something I have never done before. I am interviewing a man. Yes, I am interviewing a working dad, not a working mom. Mike is a client of mine who came into coaching carrying a mind full of rumination, pressure, stories he thought were simply true. And in our work together, I pushed him hard again and again to question every assumption he had about himself, his stress, and what he believed he should be doing. And the transformation he created that he speaks about in this interview is remarkable. In our conversation, Mike talks openly about how he stopped letting every story in his head run his life and how he learned to validate himself instead of chasing reassurance, and the simple tools that helped him finally feel in control of his focus, his emotions, and his decisions. If you've ever been stuck in your head, spiraling, overthinking, or believing the same old narrative on repeat, then this episode is one you're going to want to hear. Are you ready? Let's get to it. Well, working moms, I am so excited because I have a treat for you today. For the very first time ever, I am not speaking to a working mom on this podcast. I am speaking to a working dad. This is Mike. I'm going to let Mike intro himself here in a moment, but excited for you all to hear about him and his experience with me in coaching and all the things that he learned. He is going to bring some great insight and storytelling here, I know. So thank you for being here, Mike.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Yes, it's going to be fun. We're already laughing quite a lot. So because I already butchered your last name and it required a retake here, I'm going to have you intro yourself instead. So tell us, Mike, a little bit about you.
Well, I'm Mike Garcia. I am the Director of Client Services at Simantel, which is a marketing agency in Peoria, Illinois. I have been married to my beautiful wife for a little over 22 years now, and we've got two awesome kids. I have a daughter who just turned 16, so I'm now dealing with a driver in the house. And I have a son who's 10, almost 11, and they're both super busy and active and into everything.
I love that. It's been fun to work with you because I get just like this little glimpse of what's next for me because my kids are, 8 and 11. And so you're just a hair ahead and it's like, oh my gosh, that's what's to come. I know. So fun to hear about that. So I connected with Mike because I have a relationship with Simantel. I've coached, almost 25 people or so at Simantel, an amazing marketing agency in Peoria. And so I get the honor of coaching several people in their company, and Mike was one that I have coached recently that desired coaching. Right? We don't force coaching on anyone, but it gave him the opportunity, and he decided to take them up on that. Tell us a little bit about where you were when we first started working together, and what kind of intrigued you about coaching, and maybe even what led you to say, "Yeah, I think let's try this thing."
Sure, I'll start with the latter part of that question. So, I've been here for going on 11 years. So I've been here the entire time you've been coaching people at Simantel. Many of my coworkers, both peers and leaders, have worked with you. And I've always heard them talk about coaching with Rebecca and the great outcomes that they've gotten from it. And it was just one of those things that I finally just said, and I will be real honest, at the time that I was hearing about it, it was always, it's professional coaching. It wasn't that it was working mom coaching. So when I reached out to HR, I'm like, hey, if there would ever be an opportunity, I would, love to take a crack at it. They said, sure, and they kind of set it up, and you and I met, and it was in our first conversation that you were talking about it. I was like, am I in the right place? Is this the right thing for me? But, we just decided to go for it. I think what drew me to it is I'm a person who likes answers. I don't do well with unknowns. So if there are things that are, and that's, that kind of goes with everything. But for me personally, if there's something going on with me personally that's like, hey, this is bothering me, or this doesn't feel quite right, and I can't figure out what it is or how to solve it, then I want to find someone or something to help me, maybe not solve it, but identify what it is, come up with, so that I've got a plan and then I can go from there. And I think that's the thing that really kind of drew me to it, because there was just a lot of things that were, I don't know, kind of felt all over the place. I'd been here for a long time. As I mentioned, we're super busy at home. We have a super busy
Oh my
family
gosh.
life
Yeah.
and our house, and just kind of keeping up with everything. And so, and I'm a very active, hands-on dad and husband, and person around the house. So there was a lot of it that, as we talked, I realized, like, hey, this doesn't just apply to moms. Like, maybe certain things are different, but I know, like, there's a lot of dads in the same position I am. Like, we're all juggling a ton. And I have a wife who has a very busy, important job. And, so she's got things too. So there's just a lot of, she works from home, works remotely about 100% of the time. So there's a lot of things at home that kind of default to her to handle, like when the kids get off the bus, and if there's a call from school, or this, that, and the other. And so for me, when I'm in the office, even though, we have kind of a hybrid schedule, there's a part of me that feels like, hey, when I get home, if you've been having to deal with some of these things throughout your workday just by default because you're at home, I need to kind of step in now and give you a chance if you need to catch up on things, if there's other things you need to do. Or so there's just a lot to juggle, and there was a lot of things that were feeling kind of off. And so, just through conversation and talking to other people, are like, hey, this was great. I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. If it's something that Samantha's willing to do for their employees, and as a leader now in the agency, I felt it's important to kind of be my best self for the people that I manage, and for everyone around me.
Yeah, I love that. And you're right. The challenges of a working dad and a working mom are obviously not entirely dissimilar, obviously. Obviously, there's some unique challenges related to women, culturally, all sorts of things, obviously, as there are for men as well, and expectations and things like that that are different for men than there are for women. But at the end of the day, this, the solution, if you will, the is very similar. And
I
I,
agree.
I hear that from I hear that from men that do listen to this podcast, and or husbands, because a lot of wives will say that they get their husband to listen to the podcast or things like that, and they'll say this really applies, across the board to any parent, and for sure it does. And so I'm it's just been such a pleasure to coach with you. It's a lot of fun. And when I engage, just for listeners that don't know this, when I engage with employers who are sponsoring coaching for their employees, it's not just for women. It can obviously be for men. The coaching relationship shifts a little bit there, but ultimately the kinds of things that we worked on together were the same things I work on with, all of my clients on some level. And I love the way you framed that. You're a very hands-on, active, present father, no doubt. You are, and you are still all into to work and wanting to show up and do your best at work and deliver everything that you said you were going to deliver. And so how do you manage both of those goals at the same time, right? And how do you do it well? That was a lot of the central focus of our coaching, which is what we're all about here, being ambitious and being balanced, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if you were to think back to some of the real, like, tangible, like, work-life balance struggles or things like that were going on earlier in our time together, just to give us a hint at a couple of those examples, what would you tell us a little bit about the push and pull that you were experiencing?
I think that there was, a big part of it for me was finding separation. Like, if we had had a rough morning at home, getting up and getting everyone out the door and everywhere where they needed to go, not carrying that into the office with me. And on the reverse, if I'd had like a really challenging day, a lot of problems, a lot of things coming at me, from different angles, being able to leave that here or leave it on the road somewhere between here and home, before I got home, so that I didn't walk in carrying that frustration. And especially so on, I think I'd mentioned earlier, we work hybridly. So I work from home Mondays and Fridays. And so that's a lot easier to carry that home when you're already at home, to walk out into the hallway and still be frustrated by what happened.
Yeah.
Or, something, and vice versa. So I think that was a big thing for me. And just trying to struggle to figure out I mean, I know at work was for me was trying to figure out like exactly where do I fit and how do I make sure I'm providing value. I think a little bit real quick backstory. It's like when I the majority of my time at Simantel from the time I started until moving into this leadership role, I was in a client facing account planner role. So a lot of what you do in that role is you've got a lot of focus and attention on everything you're doing. You're dealing with the clients watching you, you're dealing with, everybody in the agency. So you're very on the front lines. And when I moved into my leadership role, it was a much more kind of operational type position, which I loved and is something that I really thrive in. But it's also much more of a backstage
Yeah. Yeah.
type of a role. And that was a big adjustment because for me, I'm like, and it was a new role too that had been created
I
for me that I
created for
moved.
you. Yeah.
So there was a lot of like, am I doing what your expectation? Am I meeting your expectations for this role? Am I providing value? Because it wasn't as tangible, and that I struggled with, for a while as somebody who kind of likes to know and likes to have control. And I think we talked really, really early on. I used the word validation a lot. It's like I didn't need attention and accolades, but I wanted some validation, like somebody be like, "Yep, you're on the right path." Because I'm like, I'll keep blowing down the road, but I don't want to get to the end and somebody say, "Yeah, this isn't what we thought. We wanted you to do that."
Yeah.
So that was a big
Yeah.
struggle
Let's
for me.
let's talk about that one for a second because that we did circle around that one for a lot. And teaching my clients to have, a mechanism of self-validation is, one of the many conversations that comes up for my clients, because we never want to be waiting around for our boss or someone else to tell us we're doing it right. Like that feels good. Please
Right.
do tell me I'm doing it right. Like bosses out there, tell your people that they're doing it right. Give them validation. And we don't want that to be the only kind of mechanism that you have to feel like you're being successful and that you're doing things right. Otherwise you kind of live in a land of like questioning yourself all of the time. And if you're kind of in a constant state of am I doing it right and wondering and not really answering or getting an answer to that question, that slowly degrades our confidence and all of the things like that. And so I remember we came up with the phrase. What was the phrase that we came up with?
It was, and I still have it on a sticky note here on my computer. I
Yeah.
keep it all the time. And we said that need for validation was an overdeveloped mechanism. It was just something that I defaulted to as, I don't know if it was excuse was the word that we used, but as a crutch,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
sit in this swirl of like, am I doing this right? Instead of just being like, yes, I'm doing it right, and having confidence in the people around me that if I'm doing it wrong or you need something else, you will tell me. And that's not on me. That's on them, like continue doing the best job that we did. So I remember when we had that conversation and you said, it's an overdeveloped mechanism. Something about that just stuck. And I literally, this was months ago. This was early on in our time. And I wrote it on that sticky note and I stuck it on my monitor here in my computer or in my office. And if I was ever feeling that way or I'd be in front, I would look at that and I would just be kind of like, nope, you're good. Nobody's telling you otherwise. And over time, I've realized that it's like, if there has been things that somebody's reached out like, hey, we really need your help with this, or here's something that we're hearing where we need support. I'm like, they're telling me when there's something that they need from this role. Cause everybody's trying to figure out, we're building the plane as we fly it here with my role and how that impacts the agency. So after a while, I'm like, no, they'll tell me if I'm veering off course or something. Otherwise, I'm going to do what I think is best. I bring value to this role. I've got a lot of experience here and beyond. They wouldn't have put me in this role if they were like, well, we don't know what he's going to do. So just that little reminder and that little sticky note has helped me get out of that headspace with that whole, like, I'm not being validated. Is this right? And sort of
Right. Because the whole idea there, an overdeveloped mechanism is we're saying like it's basically something you've just practiced. You've practiced seeking validation over and over and over again. And that's where you have gained, confidence or certainty because other people have said that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting that doesn't feel good or that we don't want that or there's anything wrong. We just want to develop some other mechanisms of validation, right? We want you to be able to feel confident and confirm and feel that sense of certainty and success without other people having to constantly tell you all of the time, right? So we just want to practice other ways. And so what I'm hearing in this is that it almost gave you permission to say, to practice another way of doing it, to just say, actually, I could wait around for them to confirm this for me, or I could just make a decision and trust my intuition on this. And I'm going to build that as a mechanism as well of validation, which obviously, as we know now, is way more empowering if you depend on yourself for your own validation than constantly seeking it from other
Right.
people, right?
Right. I think a lot of that, like over time, when I've thought about that, is, some of it kind of stemmed from my first 6-ish years or so here in that account planner type role. Is there is a lot of, you're waiting for the client to validate that what you've done is what they need. There is just a lot of built in, not that you can't have confidence in the work you're doing, but it is like, here's your final deliverable. You're waiting for somebody to say, perfect, exactly what I wanted, and not just, take it and run. So I think I got into this role and it just took a while. Like, oh yeah, nobody's going to tell you that. They're looking to you now to be the person who is doing that and telling other people and helping to validate. And, so there was just a lot of that. And I didn't know what that was until we had those conversations and we kind of realized like, yeah, that's just this mechanism. It's just the way you've trained your brain. And that was actually probably one of the easier things that we did to change and pivot than some of the other things, we did down the road. But there was something about that just really,
that really like
resonated.
You were ready to hear it, and you took it and ran with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I want to hear, what were some of the harder things though, Mike? Let's talk about that. That sounds juicy and good. What were some of the harder things we worked on together?
There were a lot of tough things that we worked about and worked on. And there were some conversation. I'll be, bluntly, there were some times where we would be in a conversation or we'd get off the phone and I would be just kind of like frustrated by the fact that you weren't telling me what I wanted to hear. I mean,
I know, I remember exactly what those conversations were. And there was a little confronting, I pushed hard a couple of times against some of your kind of ways of thinking that I was not validating. And yeah,
absolutely.
that can be frustrating.
There was one meeting session that we had that I remember very well that I came into it hot. Like I had a really rough morning with some things that were happening here. And I came in hot about this situation that had happened. And I was telling you, and you just kind of looked at me and you're like, well, that's the story you're telling yourself. And I remember being just kind of like somebody knocked the wind out of my sails. And I wanted to be like, but I'm pissed about this. Like I wanted somebody to validate that. And you were just like, that's the story you're telling. And there was some conversations.
As if it was factual, that everybody would be pissed in this. And I was like, no, that just seems to be the perspective you're choosing here.
Exactly. And there were some tough, but in the moment I can remember being like, all right, I'm done with that. I'm not getting what but whenever we would either talk through those or I would get off the session and think about it later, it was like, once you can kind of calm down, a little bit I think that was one particular situation where I came in hot. Like what had happened was super fresh. It wasn't like it had happened the week before and I'd had time to think about it and rationalize. But as I kind of walked away from that, I'm like, no, like she's right. That's what I'm telling myself. I don't know. Like I haven't gone back to this person and had further conversation. I haven't, defended myself in this situation or whatever.
You filled in a lot of holes in things that you didn't that actually weren't fact in this case. And,
absolutely.
And that's normal for us to do, obviously. But it's my job as the coach to stay fairly neutral on these things. I mean, I think it's one of the powers of coaching is that you're coming to a neutral party, and a lot of people will say that that's one of the reasons why they seek a coach, that they're looking for someone because they don't want somebody in the weeds with them. Even our spouses are in the weeds with us. Of course, they should be siding with us and they should be frustrated on our behalf and seeing our perspective and holding that perspective. A coach's job is to be able to hold space for how you feel and recognize that is that it could just be a story or that could just be a perspective or that there could be another way to think about it, and to help hold neutrality so that the individual can think about it as they would like to think about it instead of being swept up into all of the emotion. There's a lot of
Yeah.
power in that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we carried away is like, basically I'm thinking about this situation probably far more than the other parties involved. Like, because, the next day when I would see this, they're like, hey, how are you? I'm like, everybody else has got over it and moved on. And it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just this thing that happened. And I'm caught in this swirl in my head and I'm frustrated by it. And so that was tough. And we talked about that a lot, even up until the end, like our final session. One of the things that you had said to me is like goals and moving forward is like remembering the story you're telling yourself. And so that was something that was a theme that carried through. And it's something that I still do it. I mean, there are still things that I will have a trigger reaction to. It's like I've done that for so long. That's kind of ingrained who I am. But what I'm able to do now is stop it faster, stop the way of thinking faster. Like sometimes, something could happen in a conference room upstairs. And by the time I get back down to my office, I'm like, all right, this is what, and I'm already rationalizing with myself.
Ooh,
before I might carry that on for days, for the rest of the day, for several days.
Rumination is such a common experience, certainly for women, sounds like for men too, on some level. And so rumination is something that robs us of joy all of the time, right? When we can't learn how to take control of something that we're thinking about and thinking about and thinking about and thinking about and can't figure out how to let it go, right? Like that really robs us of our presence, of our joy, of having fun, of all of the things. We really do have to learn how to take back control of some of those stories and that rumination and learn to be much more in control of our thought life if we're going to experience balance, joy, all the things.
Absolutely. I call that, like when I get in those modes, I always say like, I'm stuck in my head. I've said it to my wife before, she'll be like, what's the matter? I'm like, I'm stuck in my head. And I've really worked hard at finding ways to get out of there faster, because there would be times I'd be stuck in my head. And, if it was you and I that were having a disagreement, I'd be stuck in my head for so long. I'm inventing conversations that are happening months from now with the situation that, like I'm so far down the road and everybody else is like, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? Because I've just gotten stuck and I'm building this movie in my mind that's so long. It's so epic. There's like part 4 out there and everybody else is like, oh, that was just a preview. We're done. We've moved forward. So it's something though that I try to remember that. And what I'm really working on now is trying to remember it faster. With a goal of having it be more in the moment.
I mean, I think that I'd be really curious how you'd storytell the process here on some level, because when we started, I'm not sure you even saw that as a story. I don't know if you saw some of that, being stuck in your head as this is a perspective I'm holding on to that I can't let go of. You kind of saw it on a more factual level. This is what happened and it is happening to me. I can't let it go. Like I don't have control over this. And we had to, if we were to piece this out a little bit, almost step by step, step 1 was saying, hold on. No. That is not just happening to you. You're on some level choosing to ruminate on this and think about it in this way.
Right. And as someone who likes control and when I say control, like not control of others, control of myself, understanding the situation, like knowing the facts, like that's me. So somebody who likes to have control and who greatly dislikes confrontation, that was so it's a formula to get stuck in your head for a really long time, because it's like, I'm trying to find a way to be in control of this. And it's somebody else. It's Rebecca's upset with me about something. I can't control that, but I'm trying to control it. But I also don't like confrontation. So I don't want to go and say, hey, Rebecca, why, what's going on? What's happening? So it's the perfect storm, the perfect formula to just get stuck in your head. And what I would do before is I would just let it roll out. And eventually my head just gets tired and you let it go and you move on. But there's always that underlying current. And I think what I've done now is I've just kind of, in most situations, like obviously still a work in progress, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, but I've gotten better, I think, about being like, that's just the story I'm telling myself. I don't know her side of the story. I don't know his side of I don't know the other side of the story. I don't know what's really going on. So I have to make a choice. Like, do I want to confront this and maybe have the awkward conversation? Or do I want to tell myself like, hey, you know what? It's extenuating circumstances. Let's just move on and see what happens so there's all sorts of different ways to handle it. But I think I've been able to get out of it faster
Yeah.
than I was back then. And that for me has been huge.
Yeah. So, I mean, uh, so if step one was kind of recognizing there was this kind of a story here going on to begin with, and that, I would imagine the next step as you're describing it is like recognizing that you could choose a different one on some level, and even allowing your mind to open up to the idea that there's other perspectives here and I could take them if I wanted to, right? And then moving on from there is trying to, after the fact, which is a lot of times what we would do in coaching is we would have, the rumination would come in and we would talk about what you were thinking about. And then we'd come up with another perspective and then that would shift things for you. And so you were able to let it go. But we're talking about it in retrospect at this point, right? We're talking about it days, weeks after on some level. And now what you're saying is you're like really learning how to practice, like how fast you can notice when you're stuck in your head and you can't let something go. And that moment when you're like, oh, I can choose another perspective here and I'm going to change my story and not sit with it like this, right? And that time is getting shorter. And the more you practice it, I always tell this to my clients, right? That it's a habit, right? You're getting in it's like working out. You're getting better at lifting those weights, right? And so you're getting the time between the story happening and noticing it is like getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter.
Yep. So. And I'm doing that both at work and at home. And that's been huge. We had a holiday event at our house last week. And in the about hour and a half to 2 hours ish leading up to it, it was almost like a sitcom. Like everything that could have gone wrong was going wrong. Like there was all sorts of just kind of chaos and turmoil. And you're in that moment like, why did we agree to do this? And we figured it all out, within 10 minutes of everybody, kind of walking in the door. And a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have probably spent the rest of the evening at my house in my head about it and stewing about it and mad that it was like, this didn't go right, blah, 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 and now I'm tired and I got to deal with this or whatever. And I was able to just be like, okay, all right, it is what it is. It's done. We've let it go, and literally people were walking in the door and it wasn't me plastering a smile on my face. Like, hi, welcome to our house. Merry Christmas. Sit down. I was genuinely excited that people were there. We had a great evening. And by the time everyone left and my wife and I were cleaning up, we were laughing about it. And I was like, we have to find the hidden camera. Like somewhere there must have been a camera in this house to film that chaos. And we were laughing about it. Whereas I would have still been mad about it. And so and it was funny because in that moment, I didn't think about it, but in the last day or two thinking about like, oh, we're going to be doing this podcast and kind of getting ready for it. That was a story. I'm like, oh, hey, that was something that just happened at home that was very relevant to the work that we did. So it's been kind of on both sides of the spectrum that I've been using the tools.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious, does your wife notice all these differences that you're talking about?
I've never really asked her like, hey, do you notice a difference? Because it's validation. I guess I'm like, no, hey, I've got this. I'm doing well. But I certainly hope so. I guess that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
To have.
You can listen to this podcast and then you can ask her.
But I definitely think though, if she was on here and you asked her, she would have agreed that like, oh yeah, Mike a while ago, like that was uncharacteristic for him, he still would have been, chuffed off about all that or whatever. And I just kind of was able to let it go. And so.
And I mean, obviously we're talking about letting it go, if we're going to sing the song, but letting it go as being what we want to do in these situations. But why? I'm curious, like the impact that as you have literally learned the skill set of kind of noticing when you're in your head and you're ruminating, figuring out the story, telling yourself a new perspective, moving on from it. Like, obviously, we know that that's a good thing, but what has been the actual impact of that? Have you noticed?
I think for me, it's just been, to steal your word, there's been a better sense of balance with me, And I've been able to better assess, like, I haven't let everything go, because obviously there are things that happen in your life that are frustrating situations that you can pivot out of feeling that way, but are still something that, like, I have to deal with this. Like,
Sure.
if I get a flat tire on the way home tonight, I can be mad about it and then I can pivot out of it. But at the end of the day, I'm still on the side of the road with a flat tire. I still have to deal with this problem. So I think what this has helped me do is really helped me kind of evaluate what are the things that it's like, what, can just let this go. It's fine. It's not worth my energy. It's not worth a piece of me dealing with the frustration. And then what are the things that are worth, hey, another conversation, speaking up if I feel like I need to defend myself, or if I need to push back on someone or question something that was wrong, or, stand firm on my ground on why I feel something is right. I'm not dying on every hill
Mhm.
anymore. And I
Yeah.
think in my mind,
Mm.
I used to die on every hill. Everything was a big deal. Everything would be, even though, like, what happened, last week's example at our house, looking back at it, even like a half an hour after it happened, I'm like, it's so insignificant in the big, like, my house
I
didn't
really want
burn
to know what
down.
happened.
My house didn't burn down, anything. It was pretty insignificant. It was just like one of those death by a thousand paper cuts. Like,
Yeah, totally.
everything was happening all at once. But it's like, in the big scheme of things, when I looked at that, I'm like, if I had held on to that, I would have kind of ruined this evening with our
Mm.
friends.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have
Yep.
been present. I wouldn't have been able to enjoy it. The
Yeah.
second we closed the door when they left, I immediately would have gone back to, I can't believe this happened. Being able to let that go, I was able to enjoy the evening, laugh
Mhm.
about it later. Whereas that would have been something that, but, like, on the flip side, if it was something that I'm like, wow, this is really an issue that needs to be dealt with, I think I would have been in a better headspace to, like, if it was after the party, be like, okay, now we have this issue. Now we need to deal with this. Now is the time. Or, hey, I need to talk to you about this. It's happened at work. There's been certain things now where I've been more apt to, once I can get my feelings out of it, to be like, hey, can we have another conversation? Because here's how I'm feeling about this, that, and the other. And here's what I think we should do. And not doing that with everything, doing it with the important things.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I, I wrote, before you even said the word presence, it was the thing that I wrote down, like, when you're not in your head, you actually get to be where your body is at the same time. That's what I call presence, right? Your mind and your body are in the same place at the same time, experiencing the same thing. And so learning, like, you really have gained so much more presence when you've learned to take back control of this, of your mind ultimately, and the stories that you're telling yourself. And you talked about focus as well, and like being able to go all into the things that actually matter and really just let go of the things that don't. And that focus, allows you to be more effective with your time, more productive, more, aligned with goals and things like that, more efficient on a lot of levels, right? And then really the lightness or the enjoyment, I could just hear it in your voice too. Things just don't feel as heavy, right? There's a more of a smile. There's more of a genuine, like, laughter and levity that comes when we're not stuck up here in our mind turning over things that have happened, or making up stories about things that will happen, either way. So I love that. So good. So we've talked about the overdeveloped mechanism of validation, or in other words, another thing we worked on was the self-validation. And this time we're talking about kind of getting out of your head and really taking back control of the way you're thinking about things, and rumination and things like that. Two really big things that we worked on in coaching. There doesn't have to be another one, but I would just want to make sure, is there another one that comes to mind that we haven't talked about here?
So we did a lot of talking about the pivot, the tools in the pivot cycle, which is kind of along the same lines of, what we've been talking about. Like, pivot was a big part of that, and just having that toolbox. And that, I'm also one, like, I love a process. I love to know the
Me too.
steps and the instructions.
Me too.
I'm the dad who, okay, let's read the instructions before we do the thing. So it's
I am not that way, but I do like a good process. So
that simple thing to be like, okay, what is really happening? And I think that's kind of what I did on last week with the thing, at our house. I went through a pivot, and I'm like, okay, the big scheme of things, all this is insignificant. It was just 100 of them that all hit at the same time, and kind of, push me into frustration. It's all good. I can get out of this. Everything's still going to be fine. And so that pivot process was a big one. And I think too, the kind of focusing on the transition protocol, I mean, the work to home. So that was a big, and we talked about this a little bit, but that was something that I never realized how important it was until when COVID hit and we were working from home. Because before COVID, we were 5 days in the office. So every single day I was get up, drive into work, and then drive home.
There was a natural transition,
A natural
from
transition.
home to work and work to home. Yeah.
Exactly. And then when COVID hit, it was like, okay, I'm done, close my computer, walk out the door. There are the kids, there are the dogs, there's everything that had to happen. And I didn't realize for a while how important that time was. So I kind of put some things in place to make sure I had just a couple minutes to be, before I go out, this is what I'm going to do. And sometimes I would be really good at that, but other times I would forget about it, depending on, like what was going on. So us talking through that was a great reminder of how important it was to be very intentional about that all the time. So I think, I know we had mentioned or I had mentioned in one of our sessions, it's like there's an exit I have to take off the interstate before I get to downtown Peoria every morning. And so if I have music on or a podcast or whatever, when I hit that exit, that's my cue to turn that off. And then from that exit to the parking deck is when I'm like, okay, this is going to be a great day today. This is what we're going to do. Whatever happened this morning is blah, 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 or this, it's kind of like my little pep talk there's something about that. This is where I'm exiting off. It's a natural thing to do. And I try to do the same thing on the way home when I exit off the interstate to my exit at home, to be like, okay, whatever happened at work today, we're just letting go. And this is going to be a great night. And what do we have coming on? And what do I need to be prepared for? What has happened at home that I'm going to have to address when I get home, but to get myself in a mindset. So it's not a real formal thing that I do, but for me, it was that trigger of like, hey, you know what? The exit. Those are the way, it's like when I'm exiting off the interstate, I'm exiting whatever happened in the morning, to get to work, and the same thing on the way home.
Yeah. I mean, for clients that don't have any clue what that is on some level, obviously I give you a step-by-step on that, on how do you build a good transition for yourself? Because to your point, it really is just about intentionality more than anything. It is about like intentionally getting your head and your heart, your emotions, if you will, into the right space, into a place that you want them to be instead of wherever they are. On some level, there's so many different ways you can do that, obviously, but it's not going to happen passively. It does require an element of a focus and intentionality around, what am I going to think about? How do I want to feel? What do I need to, what's my plan? What are my next steps? I do that a lot with my kids these days on all sorts of levels. It's like, we've got 4 things to do, everybody. Okay. What order do you want to do these things in? And, I do it for them in preparation, but I do it for myself too. Like, okay, we got 4 things. That's right. We got to do all these things tonight. And it's a little bit of a vision casting, a little bit of preparation, a lot of intentionality in our mindset. It makes everything go smoother when we do that.
Right. And it's funny, the more that I do it, the more I realize, more often than not, I don't have as much to transition as maybe I thought I did in my head. Like, I'll get off the exit ramp on my way to work this morning. I'm like, okay, it's going to be a great day. And then part of me is like, you know what? It's already been an okay morning. Like, yeah. Like nothing major happened. We got out the door, like everybody was where they needed to be on time. Like, hey, this is going to be good. Or the same thing on the way home. It's like, you know what? Today wasn't a bad day, or today was pretty good, and it's all going to be great. And I've tried to intentionally also do things like, unless there's something super important and pressing, like I'm not going to get on the phone on my way home. Like, I'll shoot my wife a text message and be like, hey, I'm on my way, but I'm not going to get on the phone, or I'm not going to call, because I would find sometimes I'd get on the phone and something would have happened at work. And it's like, well, now I'm going to gripe about it. And I'm going to, all the way home then, instead of transitioning, I'm going to be rehashing everything that happened. And I have found a lot of times when I get home, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to waste our time griping about this thing because it's insignificant. It doesn't matter. So some of those little things for me, I found, like getting on the phone sometimes with a parent or a friend or, my wife or whatever would be a trigger because all I was doing is like, especially if I was coming off a really frustrating day, is now I'm going to yell about everything that happened. And so if I'm like, nope, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to turn on music or I'm going to turn on my podcast and I'm just going to coast for 15 minutes until I hit the exit and then be like, all right, it's all over again. It has just helped. It's helped so much.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about control on a lot of levels,
Right.
right? Really
And I like
controlling, like,
control.
the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling, taking back control of the stories you're telling yourself and what you're deciding to think about things and your perspective of things, right? Uh, I mean, I remember we had this conversation a few different times in a few different ways, but you would come onto our call sometimes and just be like, oh man, it's just like so busy. And I'd be like, is it? Or is that a story you're telling yourself? What is that exactly? Is that true? Like it just is that what you want to tell yourself right now? How does it feel to think that you're this busy? There is a lot of pushback of like, you get to control your narrative. You get to control the narrative of life, of what you've done, of your accomplishments, of your successes, of who you are, of all the things. Like you control the narrative. And that feels like it's been a real through line for you over the course of our work together.
Yeah. And I think in that situation, you actually said, are you busy or is it your job?
Oh, that's
And there were some times where I'm like,
man,
it's more.
I can be kind of, I don't know what I am. I'm not very nice all the
Well,
time.
and I remember that being like, no, I'm busy. Like I was frustrated with that. And then I thought about it. And I mean, there were times where I'm like, no, she's right. That's just work. It's just normal work. Now there were some days where I was like, no, this is like kind of crushing right now between work and everything that's going on at home. It's like, but there were other days it's like, nope, this is just normal busy, and so that has been a perspective shift too. When I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm so busy, I'll be like, am I? Or is it, and sometimes it genuinely is. And then I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to get control of it? And other times like, nope, it's just
Just
work.
Let's just work.
It just
Story
is what
today.
it is.
Mhm.
Yep.
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 Yep. Yeah, I love that. So good. So you talked about the pivot protocol, which was like the 6 steps to kind of getting out of your head and into a different emotional space and those kinds of things. We've talked about the work to home transition as being another kind of key practice. Any other tools that you're finding yourself kind of leaning into that you learned over the course of our time together?
I mean, I do. The daily work helps. I will admit I'm not as great about doing it every single day.
Sure.
I have it out on my desk so that I can hopefully remember, and I do it on the day. Some days, you hit the door and it's like, whoa, there's already message or email, I have a meeting or whatever, and the day will fly. By the time I get to it, I'm like, ah. But other times I will come in, I'm like, I don't have anything until 9 this morning. I'm going to do this. And so again, I consider that kind of a part of my almost
Home to
like my
work. Your home
transition.
to work transition?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when I'm getting in the morning, it's just kind of helping me set the stage. I think out of that, what I do at a bare minimum, if I can't really do the formal daily work, is I'm going to be like, all right, what do I really have? Like, what does my day hold for me? And I'm going to open my calendar and I'm going to look ahead to everything that I have. What is it that I have to do? Because again, for me, it gives me a sense of control as opposed to like I'm running and all of a sudden it's like 15 minutes. What is this meeting? I'm not ready for I'm like looking ahead and I'm trying to take the time to prep for my day and follow up with people. And do I have messages and do I have things so that I can kind of stay in control? Because I find that's the part where I get the most easily frustrated or overwhelmed is if I am suddenly feeling like I'm not in control of what's happening or that I can't help because my role is naturally a helper role. Like I'm there training new people, supporting people with other things. There's a lot. So there's a lot I can't control in my day because you don't know when a problem's going to come up that somebody's going to need you for. So the more I can have control over the things I do have control over, I find it for me, it makes it easier to be present and able to help when somebody comes to my door or sends me a Teams message or an email about support that they need, knowing like, hey, I can't help you right now in this moment because I have this thing, but give me an hour and then let's sit down and do it or whatever. And those type of things, that preparation, that looking ahead, I don't know. It's such
what the daily work is really about, right? And
yes.
well, I mean, I rebranded it. It's called the Daily Kickstart. And just for any listener out there, you have access to that. There's a link in the show notes. I do give that one away for free because of what you're talking about, Mike. Like it really is a way of getting ahead of some of the swirl of the day and the craze of the day and the thoughts throughout the day that kind of that make us overwhelmed and stressed and all of the things, right? Like it's such an anchor practice if you can make it a habit.
When I think out of that conversation that you and I had, one of the things that you suggested, which to me was such a like palm to the forehead, like that's so easy. But I think I held up my to-do list one day. I'm like, oh my gosh, all this stuff keeps adding to it. And you're like, then make a shorter list of what you have to do today. Like this is everything you have to do in perpetuity, like all the things that are coming. But what do you have to do today? And again, that was such a like, yeah,
Obviously.
why did I not do that? And so when I have found days that are like, this is going to be a really busy day, there's a ton going on or whatever, I will look through and be like, what are the hot items that I can that either must be done today because of a timeliness factor, or if I can accomplish these 3 or 4 things today, I'm going to feel like I did something other than, kind of run around on fire all day. And that has helped a lot too. And especially in these weeks leading up to being off for the holiday, there's a lot of time out of the office. I've been really trying to focus on what are the things, because if I can chip away at this list a little bit of a time, I can leave for the holidays being like, yes, this stuff is done. And I'm not going to walk back in the office in January with all these things, these December items that I didn't get done. So trying to chip away. And then there's some days I get to the end of the day and it's like, hey, I did all those things and I still have an hour left in the day. What else can I knock out before I go home? And I'm watching, yes, I'm watching that, that list dwindle. So that, kind of was an offshoot of the daily work, but it was such a duh, I guess, moment for like, why did I not think of that?
No. We are creatures of habit, right? So
Yes.
this is just what, nobody's ever taught us really effective time management. Wouldn't that be a great high school class? Like should be a high school college class, like for sure, on how to effectively manage your time, organize yourself, all the things. I'm sure there are some schools that do
I've used some of this stuff with my daughter, when she's, oh my gosh, I've got so much homework and tests and all these things. I'm like, okay, well, what do you have to get done tonight? Because she's very much like me in that she's like, here's my entire to-do list of 28 things that have to happen by the weekend. And I'm like, well, what has to happen by tomorrow?
Right.
Like it's Tuesday night. What do you have to do by Wednesday? And she'll be like, these 2 things. I'm like, okay, focus on those 2 things, get them done, and then go from there. And I'm like, these are the things I learned. This is the things I have to do. So I'm trying to instill some of that in her because she's very much like me in that way. It's like, here's my list and it's just getting longer and longer and longer. But it's like, yeah, this is due in a month. Let's not worry about that right now.
Yeah. I love that. Well, we need to wrap up this time. I feel like we could chat for a long time. There was just so much that you learned and grew, and you stuck with it even when it got hard. I remember reading in your midway evaluation, you were like, I'm going to be honest, Rebecca, I wanted to quit on you midway, but I'm so glad I didn't. What are your thoughts now, Mike?
No, I'm glad that I didn't. And that was one of those things I'm like, it was hard. And in retrospect, I'm like, well, it should be hard. If it's not hard, what's the point? Then you don't really need coaching. You're not a candidate for it. It should be hard work. And I think it was harder.
We're changing habits here. We're changing behaviors. Like this takes practice and time and pushback and all the things.
It was a lot harder than I anticipated it being. It was a lot more work and kind of self-reflection on it and a lot of habit changing. And there was a lot of like, I don't like what I'm hearing, but I shouldn't like everything that I'm hearing. Like there were just some tough things that you had to accept and or that I had to accept and realize like, nope, this is me and she's right. And this is what I need to do. So I am glad I stuck with it because I do think I came out the other end with tools and habits that I'm putting into place. It will be continual. Like I will continue to work on it, but I will have these tools and things that will kind of help me pivot. And we're never going to be perfect, but if we could seek the tools to help us be better, then I think it's worth the time and the work that was put into it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a coach that's going to push you, that's not going to let you settle, that's going to hold those goals and hold that mirror up in the ways that you need so that you move forward. I mean, I'm your gal.
It's like exercise. Nobody ever really wants to do it, but you always feel better once you've done it. And sometimes in the middle, it can be hard and you can just want to be like, I'm done. But if you finish your workout or finish your run or finish whatever it is you're doing at the end, you're always like, oh, I feel better. And this is what it was like with that. Even there were sessions, there were days where I'm like, I'm not in the mood for this today. I've got other things to do or whatever. I would finish it. I'm like, this was perfect timing that I had this, that we were able to talk through this. And then when we wrapped up the final session, I'm like, no, I really did learn a lot. Flipping through the workbook and looking back at some of the things we did, I think overall it was just such a positive experience. And I would, I've encouraged others here at Samantha to do it. I would encourage anybody listening, moms or dads. It's worth the time as long as you're willing to do the work and be open to the experience.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you again, Mike, for being here, for sharing your wisdom, for being the first man I have had on this podcast. I love it. And I really wanted you to come on just because, I haven't shared much of the male perspective on this in terms of working with me and working in coaching and all of the things. And I just appreciate your honesty and your willingness to share your story.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you for everything that we worked through and for the time over the last 6-8 months.
Yeah. Such a pleasure. Of course. So, if you are, there's so many kind of next steps for you here. Maybe you're in a company that would be interested in sponsoring something like coaching. Like obviously that please reach out. Let's have a conversation around that. We talked about the daily Kickstart here today. There is a link in the show notes for you to download that same exact exercise that I walked Mike through. I walk all my clients through. It teaches you exactly how to do it. You follow along with a 10-minute video where I walk you step by step. So it's a great practice for you as well. And so much to come here in the new year. So follow along. And until next week, let's get to it. If you wake up most days spinning with 100 different priorities vying for your attention, then the daily Kickstart is exactly what you need. It's a simple 6-step process that helps you get your thoughts out of your head, reset your mindset, and refocus on what actually matters. It's designed to help shift you out of overwhelm and into calm, confident action before the chaos hits. This daily practice is the same tool I offer to all my clients, and it's going to show you exactly how to lead your day instead of react to it. It takes just 10 minutes a day, and the impact will ripple through everything: your mood, your energy, your presence with your kids, and how you lead at work. My clients indicate time and time again that this tool was the one that made the biggest difference for them, and I'm offering it to you totally free. You can download it by going to www.ambitiousandbalanced.com/daily-kickstart. And of course, I'll have that for you in the show notes as well. All right, working moms, let's get to it.